All right, our first guest here on Up to the Second College Football is a guy who can rock a muscle shirt. He can talk SEC football, talk about being a dad. It is Chris Doering, SEC Network's own, and of course a Florida Gator who had a very good weekend. What's going on, Chris? How are you, sir?
Hey, good to be on with you guys. Yeah, it was a surprisingly good weekend. Obviously, got to cover a lot of wins here in this conference, but my alma mater surprised me a little bit, man. I had been out to practice a number of times in the preseason and didn't see anything like I saw in terms of offensive output in any of those practices compared to what we saw Saturday night. So, a pleasant surprise for me, and if not for LSU, man, would have been a perfect weekend for the conference.
Yeah, so I want to ask you about Anthony Richardson because we knew he was an athlete, but this guy looked like he's been doing this for a while. Limited number of reps that he had last season, coming in and taking down a top 10 team. What did you think of that performance?
Obviously, it was amazing, man. And going back and watching the tape, I didn't get to watch it live because I was calling the South Carolina game at the same time. But watching the cut ups, he looks like he plays at another speed, like everybody else is moving, half rate of what he's moving. So it's I guess the reason why probably in being at practice, I wasn't impressed with the offense is because you can't simulate game reps in practice. You're not going to let your quarterback get hit. And the strength of Anthony Richardson is his elusiveness, his strength, his ability to extend plays, his ability to scramble when he's in trouble. So, it clearly made sense after I saw what I saw, but I did not have any idea that Florida was going to be able to move the ball as efficiently and as they did. And I want to give credit watching the cut up, man. Offensive line was better than what I thought they were going to be. The running backs ran hard in addition as a compliment to Anthony Richardson. So this is an offense that has a lot more upside than what I ever could have imagined, and I'm excited about what they can do against a challenging Kentucky team Saturday night.
I was going to say, what a tough start to your schedule. Utah, then Kentucky. Kentucky doesn't look great in their opener, but they take care of business. How tough of a matchup is this one?
Yeah, it's a tough month of September for Florida because in addition to those two teams, they end the month going to Knoxville against Tennessee, and everybody feeling really good about where the Vols are this season. So it was good to get a win in the bank with that schedule in front of you. But the reason, and going back in the postseason or preseason, I picked Kentucky to have a historically good season, but I picked them to win in this game against Florida. It was because where the schedule kind of laid out for the Gators, having to play against a physical Utah team on Saturday night, win or lose, it was going to be draining emotionally and physically, and then having to come back and play against an equally, if not more physical team in Kentucky, I thought posed a real challenging situation for the Gators. And so I wasn't impressed with Kentucky's offensive line play. I don't know how much better they can get in the matter of a week, but I do think Florida's going to have to find a way to refill the tank and get ready to go, make sure they have that same sort of energy that they bring as well as the Swamp brings.
All right, well, I've got to pivot to my question of the week, and I'm sure a lot of people are asking this too. Do you think that Texas has a chance of making this game against Bama at all interesting?
No, not at all. I mean, I think this is a similar type, maybe not to the extreme of what we saw Georgia do to Oregon, but I think we're talking about a mismatch right now. I mean, obviously, there's some intriguing storylines with Steve Sarkisian taking on his former coach there, Nick Saban. I just don't think they're quite ready for what Alabama's going to bring to the party on Saturday. It looked like Bryce Young found some young receivers to step up and fill the void of Mechie and Williams. Offensive line, at least for one night, looked better there. The defense was lights out, shutting out Utah State. So I think Quinn Ewers is in for a handful on Saturday between Dallas Turner and Will Anderson heating him up. So it's not going to be competitive, in my opinion.
All right, Chris, so A&M gets App State this weekend, a team that scored 40 points in the fourth quarter against North Carolina. I watched that game because I was getting ready. We were in that 3-hour rain delay for the Aggies and Sam Houston. Your thoughts on what Appalachian State can do potentially offensively and what they've been able to do over years is just really make these games so competitive.
It was hard to watch with my connection to North Carolina, particularly their defense. Gene Chizik, having been on the desk with us for the last 5 years, taking over the DC position, as you mentioned, gave up a historic 40 points in the fourth quarter, but somehow found a way to get a stop in that 2-point try that App had at the end of the game. App is always feisty. They're always playing with a chip on their shoulder. I think a lot of those guys feel like they were overlooked by some of the Power 5 conference teams and play extra hard. Good news is you don't have to go to App like North Carolina did, but I think it'll be a challenge. And going back and looking at some of the stuff that transpired on Saturday, Texas A&M is going to have to find a way to block better. I mean, that's the real surprising thing to me is that they weren't able to run the football against Sam Houston State very consistently. So finding a way to get back to what their bread and butter is, and that's running the football and being able to play great defense. I was impressed with the shutout. Obviously, it's a little inferior talent than they'll probably play later in the season, but you can only line up and play against the team on the other sideline. And quite frankly, that 3-hour rain delay, like nothing worse as a player than getting warmed up and playing and going back in and waiting. Like I can imagine the toll that took on them, not only physically but the unknown and not understanding when you're going to have a chance to get back out there and play again can be challenging from the mental standpoint too.
Right. Speaking of that A&M offense, what did you make about Haynes King's first performance on the football field in around a year?
Yeah, full disclosure, I haven't had a chance to go back and watch the cut-ups yet. I saw some of it on TV as I was having to head to Columbia for the South Carolina call. But I do, it probably what you expect, right? I mean, a guy hadn't played in a year, trying to knock some of the rust off. I thought he made some good plays and at times left some out there on the field. But clearly I trust Jimbo Fisher. Nobody knows quarterback play as well as he does. And so I think he feels comfortable with the decision. And I imagine there's going to be a considerable jump for the entire team, but specifically for he and the offense from week 1 to week 2, as everybody kind of talks about. The most improvement takes place from the first game to the second game usually.
Chris, the South Carolina-Arkansas game, I'm really intrigued by because South Carolina played, Georgia State really close, at least for a while. Then, they're able to get those special team touchdowns. And then Arkansas, I have a lot of respect for Cincinnati, but it's not the same Cincinnati team from last year. Desmond Ritter's gone. Some of their defense is gone. Yet that game came down to the wire as well. How good of a matchup is it this weekend?
Definitely questions still to be answered for both teams. And I had an up-close and personal look at South Carolina on Saturday night. The talk all offseason in the conference was Spencer Rattler, and Spencer Rattler was largely negated because the offensive line was so poor. Weren't able to run the ball like they could last year. Definitely didn't protect him very well. He got sacked multiple times and probably should have been sacked a few more times if not for his athleticism. But even some of the throws he completed, it was scrambling out, buying time, letting receivers uncover. So I really felt for Spencer not being able to take his steps, set his feet, and throw the football. The offensive line's got to be a lot better. I know a lot of the South Carolina players have come to the defense of the offensive line on social media this week so far, but all offseason we were told that these guys, all 5 of them coming back as starters, were going to be a lot better than last year. And at least in the first game of the season, I didn't see the improvement. Now, on the other side, we know how physical and well-disciplined Barry Odom's defenses are, and they're going to be a challenge for what South Carolina's offensive line is going to have to do on Saturday. I am still a little curious as to who else is going to step up. I assume, I don't know if we've seen an announcement yet, but Jalen Catalon going down with another shoulder injury clearly has everybody concerned there. I thought Bumper Poole was tremendous with his 13 tackles on Saturday, but who are some of the other guys that are going to step up, particularly on the defensive line and take over that physical mentality that last year's team had?
Chris, right now, do you think it's really Georgia, Alabama, and then everybody else?
Yeah, I thought it was Alabama, space, Georgia, space, everybody else. But I think with the performance that Georgia had on Saturday against Oregon, they're right there in my mind with Alabama. The defense was a question. Who were the guys that were going to step up and take over for all the production you lost last year, particularly 5 of those guys in the NFL draft? But it looked like they hadn't missed a beat. I mean, it was fast. It was aggressive. It was playing together in a very tight, kind of connected manner that impressed me. And then offensively, that was by far the best that I've seen. That offense look, the best I've seen Stetson Bennett look. They let him take the leash off a little bit and put the game in his hands. And I thought he was cool. I thought he was collected under pressure. And some of those scramble plays that he made really showed the athleticism that I think a lot of people don't necessarily give him credit for. So I put those 2 teams in the mix. I do think there's a bit of a space between the next tier, and everybody's kind of fighting for that spot. But I will say this, Kennedy, I'm impressed with the SEC East. I think we all know from top to bottom that the SEC West is the best division in college football from top to bottom. But in the East, we talked about who the next best team was going to be behind Georgia, and you saw Florida make a bid for that. Tennessee looked great. Hendon Hooker was tremendous on Thursday night. Kentucky escaped with a win over Miami of Ohio. Missouri got a win. Even Vanderbilt, like Vanderbilt it has 2 more wins than LSU does at this point in the season. So it's a fun kind of discussion to have, even though I think the West is still better. I think the East is trying to narrow the gap a little bit.
All right, Chris, we talked to Anthony Richardson. A little bit about Stetson Bennett. There's some good quarterback play this past weekend. Who else caught your eye?
We'd be remiss not to talk about Will Rogers. And Will Rogers, to me, it was like a victim of Pac-12 syndrome, where you play late, they got delayed, nobody's really watching, but people didn't see him throw the football 49 times and complete 78% of them, including 5 touchdowns. The guy has just taken his play to another level, and I'm excited about the season for them. I think they're a little bit under the radar. Obviously, we talked about Stetson Bennett there, Anthony Richardson. I'm interested to see what Will Levis does this week against Florida. He also struggled not being protected for much of the game against Miami of Ohio, but still with his athleticism was able to be elusive and made some great throws in that one too. So I'm a big fan of his, and obviously we haven't even talked about Bryce Young, but he really looks like he's picking up where he left off last year too.
What did you make of Brian Kelly's debut against FSU?
I thought LSU was absolutely miserable. I mean, I was shocked at how bad they were. Their offensive line, clearly, we know why Jaden Daniels won that job. His athleticism was supposed to be one of the reasons why he was the favorite to win the job, but the deficiencies on the offensive line, their best play was a scramble play. Their second best play was a pass interference or personal foul call against Florida State. Other than that, they did next to nothing. So, I think that LSU's in trouble this year. I thought that they were a team that could exceed expectations, but after watching not only the deficiencies on the offensive line, the strength of the team was supposed to be the D-line. I thought they were largely a non-factor, and the injury to Mason Smith now makes that even more glaring. And then the undisciplined nature. I think that's the thing that surprised me the most. Brian Kelly, known for, I thought he was going to bring that team together. I thought they were going to look like they were playing well as a unit, but they made a ton of mistakes, red zone errors, penalties, special teams muffs. You had the coming off the sideline after a timeout, having to call a timeout. Like, they just looked like they were completely disjointed, and that was the thing that I think surprised me the most about their effort on Sunday night.
Chris, man, you're the best. Thank you so much. We'll do it again, all right?
Yeah, fun being with you guys. Look forward to checking back in a couple weeks.